You were explaining the ego as something that takes ownership, that creates its existence through ownership of action. You were talking it from the angle of action. I was thinking if we could talk about it from the angle of experiencing itself, because you said earlier that the experience comes first and then that creates the experiencer, so to speak. And also that the experiencer and the experience arise and fall together. So that's the basic duality of the mind. But this means that there is no static or a permanent experience behind any of this. It's always just like the mirror image of the anything experienced.
Yep.
So why is there the illusion of a continuity there? Because all of us experience ourselves as static entities. We have a static.
No, that's not an illusion. That's an insistence.
Insistence.
That's an insistence. That's a particular stubbornness, not an observation, not even a deduction. It's an insistence. See, there is something that does not change, right? And the very insistence of the ego is to claim that it is that. I am that. And that is called the truth. That which does not change and therefore, in some sense, has a continuity. If the ego accepts that it is changing every moment by virtue of its association with ever-changing Prakriti, then the ego will have to drop its claim of being that which is unchangeable. Please understand. The ego is stuck in a difficult position. On one hand, it has to say it is that which is the truth. Right? And truth alone exists. But for its existence, the ego must cling to Prakriti, because without Prakriti, the ego has no existence. The ego can never say I am. The ego always says I am P. And P can be P1 till Pn, anything in Prakriti. So the ego has to cling to Prakriti to have existence. It must have existence. Why? Because truth exists. Truth exists. And the ego's insistence is that I am the truth. I am that. So the ego must first of all prove that I exist. To exist, it clings to Prakriti. But the second thing about truth is that not only does it exists unchangeably, nitya. So the ego is in, I said, a difficult spot. On one hand, it has to prove its existence. On the other hand, it has to prove its existence by sticking to someone that is continuously changing. So the ego tells itself, stuff is changing, I am not. Stuff is changing, I am not. My age is changing. I just changed jobs. I just changed my shirt. The point is to prove to itself that there did exist someone unchanged even while the shirt was being changed. The fact is, with the change of the shirt, you too have changed. The ego is lying to itself. But the ego says, I changed shirts, which means the shirts changed, I did not. You did. Don't lie. And if you could be someone who does not change with a change of shirts, then you are home.
This is just something very hard to get, because I think in a previous session I think you said that the ego is a choice in some sense. Now you're using the word insistence. It's very...
When I say the ego is a choice, that's the teaching. When I say the ego insists to live a choiceless and dead life, that's the fact. One thing is how the reality is. The other thing is where I want to take you to. In most people, there is no choice. But potentially the choice can exist. So whenever I will teach, I will talk continuously of choices. Please understand that when I'm talking of choices, I'm not talking of choices as if they already exist. By talking of choices, I am invoking choices. I'm not talking of pre-existing choices, because for most people, there are no choices. So when I say you have a choice, I'm not pointing to a choice that you already have. When I say you have a choice, I am actually invoking a choice. It's not as if you already have it. It's like going to a sleeping man and telling him loudly, "You are awake." Is he really awake? But when you will loudly tell him that he is awake, he will wake up. So you are not telling him his current state. You are trying to bring about a change in his current state. So choice is not what you have. Choice is what you need to have. When the great sages tell you, you are the Atman, do you look at your face and find the Atman there? When the realized ones tell you, you are the pure self, are they telling you the facts of your life? No. They are telling you the potentiality that you have. Therefore, the lesson is, the teaching must not be taken as just a description of the fact of our life. This is not a lecture hall. You would have understood by now, it is a workshop. In a lecture hall, you just listen. In a workshop, you actively create something. This is a workshop. The choice is being created here. You're not just here to listen. You're here to go through active transformation in this moment itself.
But then we still have the word insistence you just used.
Yes.
That would imply
That insistence, Julius, is the resistance to the teaching.
okay.
The ego must insist that it is the truth already, therefore it must resist the teaching. Because if you're the truth already, then somebody is just wasting your time telling you all these wonderful sounding things. You're already the truth. Why do you need to listen to all this?
Yeah, but isn't that the thing that you can't never claim it, because when the truth is in operation, you're not really there to experience anything?
That too depends on how severe your insistence is. Because there can be no two truths, right? If you are already the truth, why would you pay heed to an alternate truth? The first thing, therefore, is to acknowledge, the insistence has to be dropped.
We need to continue on this, but I think now is not a good time. But I have one more thing from the verse itself, if that's okay.
No, that's okay. And it's a good time. No issues.
Yeah. I mean, we have things to continue from here, but right now I just don't have anything to. I'm not sure what to carry on, but we'll get there. But from the verse itself, it uses the word that notions of heat and cold, of pain and pleasure, are born only of the contact of the senses with their objects. And I'm not sure if it's a thing with the translation, but I got the impression that the notion of something being painful or pleasurable is in the experience itself. But is it really so? Because we need to use the conditioning to interpret something as painful or pleasurable, right? I mean, how do I say that something is likable or dislikable to me?
Is the thing with the word notion?
Yeah, like that the notions of pain and pleasure are born only of the contact of the senses with.
No, it's a bit with the translation. The word here is Shitoshna Sukh Dukh Dah. So the givers of the feeling of hot and cold and sukh dukh, which is pain, pleasure. So all that is coming from just the contact of senses with the prakritic world. So notion is not really there in the verse. It's coming from the translation.
Yeah, it's just confusing because I've actually, the last time we spoke, I was saying that I'm reading Nisargadatta, and right afterwards I actually went pretty fast to U.G. Krishnamurti, and there, the thing that has really hit me from there is that it really feels like that these kind of experiences of duality are kind of born out of the demand for pleasure, avoid pain. And it feels like that if there's no movement, if there's no demand to feel pleasurable, then it feels like that the mind is not in operation. That does this make sense? I'm just thinking if this is even pertinent to the verse right now, but it just came to my mind because it feels like that the verse says that this physical nature is painful or pleasurable as it is. But is it really? Like, how can we know it as pleasurable or painful without being conditioned to feel something about it?
But that's exactly what the verse is saying.
Okay, then I'm just not understanding.
Please, okay. Pain and pleasure come at two levels. One is physical, one is mental. Let's look at the physical thing, right? I don't know swimming. You put me in water. I don't know swimming. You put me in water. What is that to me? Pain. Right? I don't know swimming. You have thrown me into a pond. I'm going to be asphyxiated. Finished. And you have just taken out a fish from the pond and you throw it back into the water. What is that for the fish? Pleasure. So pain and pleasure depend on my prakritic composition. That the difference is just bodily, right? My lungs are not designed to extract oxygen from water. I can have oxygen only from air. But if you look at the fish, its body is designed to extract oxygen even from water. So the fish happily lives there. Difference is just physical. And the physical difference becomes the difference between pain and pleasure. That's what he's saying. Right? Now come to the mind. So I am attached to, let's say, my nationality. And someone else is attached to his, and these two nations are at war. A and B belong to their respective nations. And then you receive the news that A's nation is winning. This is pleasure for A and pain for B, because their mental constitution is different. So that exactly is the point. That your pain and pleasure are defined by your physical and mental constitution. There is nothing absolute in them. They are relative to who you are. And who you are is again a function of what your experiences have turned you into. So there is nothing therein for you. You have been made by your experiences, and according to what you have been made, you decode your experiences as pain or pleasure. Where are you in all this? The emphasis is on seeing the non-existence of what you call as the I. That's all.
But in some sense, if the I is not, then can there be any experience? Because can there be such a thing as just experience? Because if we say that there's just experience, then we'll ask that for whom exactly? That it's all, it has to be to the conditioned entity, right?
Yeah, but the conditioned entity need not be you.
But but how can I separate myself from it and say that I am, like, I am nothing else?
That's what the entire session was about, surprising yourself.
Okay. Yeah.
Obviously, you throw me into the water and I don't know swimming, so there will be pain. There will be pain. But can I look at the pain with a stillness that does not naturally come to a drowning person? Not sure whether that would save me from drowning, but it's still of great value. There would be pain, there would be pleasure, but I have to see that I am not the experiencer of those things. Not that the experience would cease, just that the experiencer is not who I am.
No, I mean, I get it, because I've used this so much as a method almost during these years. But sometimes it just feels like that even something like this is so easy to co-opt. It just becomes the same structure, you know. And I guess that's why reading Yuji has been so refreshing, because he really denies everything like this. He just says what actually you said earlier also, that there's nothing you can do. And it's very good to hear sometimes, because you just realize that you're not really doing anything.
Yeah. But you can, there's something you can do, if it can be called doing at all, which is understanding. Otherwise, even Yuji is incomprehensible. Even if he tells you can do nothing, still you are doing something just to get those words. That's called understanding. That's understanding. And that's what all spirituality is about, understanding. Not doing, understanding.
That clarifies it very well, actually. I felt kind of a friction there sometimes reading them, but yeah. Now there's no friction. I hope that I have some miracles on my way.
Wonderful.
Yes.